right. Thank you very much. Thanks, everyone, for coming to our session. Before we start, just a quick round poll. Raise your hand if you're using browser today. All right, see, I told you there'd be some browser. Now, raise your hand if you're using synthetics. All right, good. How about both together? All right, maybe at the end of this, we'll see some more hands. All right, so just to jump in, we're going to be talking about customer experience and measuring using BrowSyn. We are not lawyers, but our lawyers did write this for us, so make sure to keep this confidential. And without anything else, let's get going. So who are we? My name is Ty Herbert. I'm the browser product manager. You could maybe guess that. I've been with New Relic for just over 5 months. And we also have John here today.
So I'm John Marcel. I'm also a product manager at New Relic. I've been with the company about 2.5 years, and I'm responsible for synthetics. And we are joined today by Jared Sprague from RedHat. And Jared's going to share some case studies later in the talk. So what are we going to talk about today? We're going to talk about customer experience monitoring, what it is and why it matters. We're going to talk about using browser and synthetics, which we like to call BrowSyn, together to do this sort of customer experience monitoring. We're going to hear some case studies from Jared at RedHat. We'll have some product announcements, and we'll have some time for Q&A. So jumping right in. What we're looking at here are customers using a UI to access your application, which sits on some infrastructure. So when we talk about customer experience monitoring, what we're really talking about is trying to monitor as far up this stack as possible. Ideally, we want to really understand directly what customers are seeing when they use your site. So this falls into 3 categories. We want to understand availability. We want to understand if the site is performant. We want to make sure that everything is working the way you would expect it to. So in the history of monitoring, early on, the focus was really on infrastructure monitoring. And the reason was this is the first thing people figured out how to monitor. It was pretty easy to know, is your server running? Is it slowing down? And then you could use this as a proxy for customer experience. So you sort of assume if the server is running the way you expect it to, then probably everything else is okay, and you've got a decent customer experience. So it turns out that doesn't necessarily work. There's lots of things between the infrastructure layer and the customer that can go wrong to create a poor customer experience. So eventually, some people, including us at New Relic, figured out how to monitor the application layer. So this is a step in the right direction. You're moving up the stack here. There's less things that can go wrong between this and your customers, right? But it is still a proxy. And there are still things that can go wrong that you're not going to see. So that brings us to today. So now we have tools like Browser and Synthetics that can really directly monitor customer experience. And this is really cool because we don't need proxies anymore. We can really ensure that our customers are having a good experience and being successful on our sites. Because here's the thing. If customers are successful on the site, doing what they want to do and doing what you want them to do, then that's what drives your business. So that means you want to monitor that directly. So obviously, you still have to keep your application up and running. You still have to keep your infrastructure up and running. That is critical to providing this customer experience. But you want to be engaged in this front-end monitoring. And that sort of front-end monitoring has always been important, but is more important now than it's ever been before. And here's why. So this iceberg is your application, at least until climate change is done with it. In the early days of the web, most of the work of these applications happened on the server side, happened on the back end here. And that front end was a really thin, relatively dumb presentation layer. There wasn't a whole lot that could go wrong. Then along came Ajax, and eventually that sort of led to some of the new frameworks we have today, like Angular and React. And that means that the front end is doing more of the application work than it's ever done before. So icebergs today look more like this. So there's still a lot of work happening on the back end, but you have unprecedented amounts of work happening on the front end, which means they have more and more influence over customer experience. So looking at a real example of this, this graph is an actual site that's being monitored with New Relic Browser. and I will call your attention to the page load times. So if you look at this, you'll notice these are pretty high. 7 to 8 seconds is a really long time to ask customers to wait for content. So there's a customer experience problem here, and you're going to want to fix that, right? So where can we put our efforts to do that? So this, it turns out, is the distribution of where that problem is coming from. And you'll notice the back end here is a really small part of that. We're talking about like 1/3 of a second out of that 7 or 8 seconds. So that means if you're only monitoring that application layer, you actually don't know you have a problem here, right? You're looking at that, oh, 1/3 of the second on the server side, like probably okay. I'm assuming my UI is loading, and we're fine. So you would miss this problem if you're not doing front-end monitoring. Now, I'm sure that you guys know the standards on abandonment rate. So a page that takes more than 3 seconds to load has a 40% increase in abandonment. And then there's an extra 7% for every second past those 3 seconds. So on our example here, we're talking about a 68% abandonment rate. So 68%, that's like 2/3 of your customers are just gone before the page is even loaded. Like I said, if you're not monitoring that front-end transaction time, you're missing that you even have this problem. So how do we get that kind of clarity on a page like this? Well, the way that we're going to talk about today is using Browser and synthetics, or BrowSyn, to do this. So I'm going to hand it over to Ty, who's very eager, to tell you guys about how these tools work together to really give you this comprehensive view into your application.
All right, thanks, John. So BrowSyn is an interesting concept, but really, it's, if you think about it, what each product can do individually is not fully what each product can do together. So together, BrowSyn provides you that browser and synthetics comprehensive view into your customer experience. But before we jump into what BrowSyn really is, let's look at each product individually. So as many of you probably already know, just a quick review. Browser provides a view into what how the customer interaction is affected in performance on your website today. So with that, we capture performance by page and some other additional details, but also the errors that occur and some stack traces that occur within those errors. So you can see the details of the errors and understand what's going on, diagnose and solve those. We also support newer technologies such as single-page applications and some other things we'll talk about actually down in a few minutes. Synthetics, on the other hand, is more of a monitoring solution. It provides you the ability to monitor a page or multiple pages on your website that are key for you. We provide this from 18 different locations globally, and it's hosted on a consistently fast network. So it provides you consistent monitoring, scheduled monitors based on how often you want to check your site. So how do we use them together? So in our example here, we're saying browser is reactive and synthetic is proactive. Ignoring the buzzwords for a minute here, let's really understand what that means. Both of these are really essential to your customer solution to understand how your customer is currently reacting and how you want them to react with your site going forward. So from a browser reactive standpoint, this is what has happened. It's how your customers have interacted with your site, whether it's from a mobile device, maybe going down to the subway and having a very slow page load time, to someone who's using internet connections going very quickly. You have all of those on one chart, and you can see how the performance and average is affected by those. Synthetics, on the other hand, is more of a proactive approach. So it's saying, hey, these are my key value pages or multiple pages I want to monitor, and you can understand how the performance is even if there's no traffic to those pages. Say it's the middle of the night on your shopping cart. So if you look at both of those together, you start to see, here's my baseline, here's my consistently quick CDN connection, and here's what the actual activity my customers are doing, and how do those two compare? So we're in New York City today. Let's look at this a different way, from more of a real world, how you guys can play a role here. If we're in New York City today, and I have everyone in this room go onto a bus, we go down to ground zero, and I'm like, okay, everyone, how would you get back here? So think for a second the route that you might take. Now, do you think that the person next to you would take the same route to get back here? Probably not, right? So browser is going to be the actual. It's going to be how everyone else around you gets from ground zero to here. Where synthetics is going to be the solution that you expect them to go, the kind of the best path that you would take. Now, if you think about it, how you look at that together, not only from a performance, but also from maybe people are taking a different route that you would expect to take, or maybe you need to adjust your best path to follow what your customers are doing. That all goes into how you can use browsers and synthetics together. Now, as our last example here, we look at browser as more of the jungle, and synthetics is the lab. So why is this the jungle? Well, you think of from a browser standpoint, you have all of the different variations of devices, browsers, and also connections and other variables that customers have that will impact the performance on your site. Where synthetics, on the other hand, is more of the lab. It's going to provide you that consistent baseline that's on the quickest connection, on the same schedule, that allows you to really understand optimally what is the performance of my site. So this really kind of helps form how you can use both of them together to understand your optimal and your actual, and then leverage and improve both based on the results. So with that said, I'm going to hand over to John to walk through a couple of real-world examples.
Thank you. So as Ty said, I've got a couple examples here. And the purpose here is really to show the sorts of issues that can happen with an application in the wild that really necessitate coverage in multiple different ways, in this case browser and synthetics, in order to have visibility into all the things that might go wrong. So the first case here is the mysterious case of the browser-specific race condition. So before I was a product manager, for many years I was a front-end developer, and this is actually the sort of issue that I have run into from time to time. So in this example, we have our application. It uses JavaScript for some portion of its functionality on the front end. And as you may know, different browsers process JavaScript slightly differently with slightly different timings. And so in this case, what we've got is in Safari only, we're seeing a race condition that's causing this intermittent failure. Now, synthetics is not going to catch this issue. And the reason is because synthetics has that kind of lab model, we're trying to keep the variables to a minimum. So one of the ways we do that is only running on Chrome. So obviously, if you have a tool that's running on Chrome, you're not going to catch a Safari bug. So browser is going to save the day here. Browser has that jungle of data where you're seeing every possible variable and combination of variables. So when you see this spike in errors, you're going to be able to filter in and say, show this to me filtered by browser, right? And all of a sudden you discover, hey, this spike only exists for Safari users. Now you have this really strong indication of where to look to solve your problem. I did not have these tools when I was trying to solve these problems. So for me, we can talk about, and people like me who don't have these tools, we can talk about the impact here. So one impact is whatever your revenue model, your affected customers you're not able to capture in this, right? Your application's failing for them. And maybe you're losing trust with those customers. Maybe they're going to a competitor's site. Not ideal. Also, there's an opportunity cost here. These kinds of problems can be really hard to diagnose. They can take a long time to diagnose without the right tooling, which means your engineers are focused on this bug and not on building out your next feature or improving site performance or things that are going to really drive your business. So the second example is the chilling case of the broken button that looked just fine. So this really happened. We saw this with a customer. It was an e-commerce provider. And they had an engineer who deployed some code. And in that code, the JavaScript binding for the add to cart button was broken. The JavaScript itself wasn't broken. It just wasn't bound to the button properly. So in this case, browser's not going to catch it. And the reason is because we're not seeing a JavaScript failure, there's no error for browser to key off of. To browser, it looks like your user went to this page, the product detail page, and then went somewhere else. But luckily, we have synthetics. So as an e-commerce provider, you can imagine that adding things to the cart and checking out is a pretty high-value transaction. So this is going to be probably the first thing that you start monitoring with synthetics. And because synthetics is proactive, as soon as you do that deploy where this button is broken, you're going to start getting alerts that says, hey, this super high-value transaction is broken for you. You should go look into that. Now, the impact on this one is pretty obvious. If you can't add items to your cart, you can't sell anything. If selling things is how you make your money, you can basically do the math of what's my revenue per minute through my website times the number of minutes it would take to even know I had this problem, let alone to fix it. And that's going to be your impact. So hopefully these examples kind of illustrate why you need these tools together to get the kind of full view of everything that could go wrong with your application. That said, I don't expect you to take my word for it. Ty and I, as the PMs for these products, are probably pretty biased. But because of that, we're really excited we've got Jared Sprague from RedHat today. Jared has become a BrowSyn believer and wants to talk you guys through some of how RedHat is using BrowSyn for their customer experience and what that's meant for them. So thank you, Jared, and come on up.
Thanks, John. Thanks for inviting me. First, a little bit about myself. I lead the DevOps and Site Reliability program for the Red Hat Customer Portal. And so the Customer Portal is our primary way that we interact with our customers online. It's the way we engage with our customers online. So the customer experience is vitally important to us. And we rely on New Relic browser and synthetics to measure that and monitor that. So one of the things when I talk to people, especially within Red Hat, about why we need synthetics when we already have synthetics in browser, when we already have origin-based monitoring, application monitoring, the way I like to answer that is by this picture here. And that is, you might recognize this from the HBO show Silicon Valley when they're actually in a data center. And I love this picture because this represents origin servers to me. So all of your applications run on an origin server. And if your customers actually were in the data center and terminaled into your origin server where your application's running, then you could probably get by with just application monitoring, or APM or origin, other types of origin-based monitoring. But of course, customers don't do that. Nobody does that. There's a vast array of things between the origin servers and the customer. So things like your CDN layer and your firewall and DNS and all of those things can go wrong that would make the application unavailable to the customer, would not be detected by origin monitoring, but would be detected by synthetics and browser. So I'm going to tell a little bit about our story to, our road to BrowSyn, our Red Hat story, basically. It started out when our current synthetics kind of uptime monitoring system was not meeting our needs. We were very clear that we needed something better. It wasn't giving us an accurate uptime score, which we really needed to communicate to our customers, and both internal and external customers. So when we knew we had that need, so we decided that we would have a bake-off based on a list of requirements, everything that we would want in a customer experience and availability monitoring solution. And so we came up with our list of all of the things we could want, possibly. Then we took all of the different players in that space and did a bake-off. And at the end result of that was that New Relic was the clear winner. It met all of the requirements that we needed. It was by far the best choice. And so it was a really good exercise. We found, and we were really happy that we discovered synthetics in browser. So the monitor's turned off.
Well, that's not good.
Yeah.
We should have been monitoring this.
Yeah. Yeah. I pressed spacebar and it just. Let's see. No, this is black. Let's see. Are the projectors out? Oh, the projectors are on.
It's, not,
Do you have a
it's
laptop?
unplugged right now. Let's try to put it back in.
I'm getting signal like this
As you can see the screen there.
I don't have a monitor for visuals,
Oh.
but the switcher input still shows good connection.
Yeah, get your laptop out.
Turns out presentations are easy.
Yeah. We thought this would.
Let's try this real quick.
Do you want to try mine with a different dongle?
Sure.
What slide are we on?
Yeah.
Oh, there we go.
Or,
You got it?
I think so. Let's see.
oh, okay.
So that's not us. Oh yeah.
Here, switch. We can switch computers and see if that works.
Try mine again.
Yes. All right.
Sweet.
Curious case solved by BrowSyn.
Yeah.
Real-time troubleshooting.
Check. Test. All right. Still gonna hear me? All right, great, thank you. All right, let's get back into it. Okay, so after we selected New Relic for our browser and synthetic solution, we redesigned our monitoring architecture for the enterprise, for the customer portal. And what this architecture includes is a combination of synthetics, browser, and origin agents too as well. So what the one thing we wanted to do, the main problem we wanted to solve was we wanted an accurate uptime score from the customer's point of view. And we wanted to be able to troubleshoot and find problems in the layer between a user's browser and our origin servers. So we have synthetic locations, external. Each one of those blue boxes is a synthetic location. External meaning outside of the CDN, at the edge, outside of our firewall, in addition to browser. And those things make up our uptime score, because the uptime score is not not about if your application is up or not. It is about whether the customer is available for the customer. So even if your application is up and running, but the customer can't get to it, it's not available for them, then that should count towards your uptime score. Your uptime score needs to reflect that. So that's why we use synthetic locations to generate our public uptime score. And then we have private locations on the other side of that, on the internal, which help us to diagnose and troubleshoot problems in our CDN or DNS firewall layer. So that's our architecture. All right, so now I'm going to get a couple use cases. So this is a browser case of a significant event of degraded customer experience. So we had a release that significantly caused performance to go down. The page load time spiked way up, and when it did, we got browser triggered an alert, so we knew right away, so we could react to it, and we could correlate that to the timing of a release. That we knew that this, from the end user, this was causing a significant performance degradation. And then we were able to respond quickly and resolve it. And then browser also showed us all the cascading effects of this through our AppDex score, our the throughput and AJAX timings. And I'll also point out that this was caught by browser, but not by synthetics, because the apps were not actually down. It was just significantly slower. So the next case is a synthetics only case, and this is a great one. This is a chart of one of our synthetic locations that we knew that something at a certain time, something changed where it started causing daily intermittent failures. And this was only happening on the external synthetic location. So going back to the architecture I showed at the beginning, the private locations and the APM agents were not failing. They were completely fine. So we knew it had to be something in between, either firewall, CDN, and it was actually, we use Akamai, and what happened was someone put a IP address into our Akamai site shield that was blocking a specific node in our load balancer. So anytime you would hit that, from the customer's point of view, the application was not available for them. It wouldn't load. But it was only detected by using synthetics at the edge because it was in our Akamai layer. And then we knew right away when it was resolved, because as soon as we took the IP out of Site Shield and Akamai, the monitor started passing again. It was very, very, very obvious to see. All right, so now here's an example that was caught by both synthetics and browser, and this is the case of a corrupted JavaScript file in Akamai Edge Cache. So we had some synthetics monitors failing, but only from certain geographical locations, and browser was showing an increase of JavaScript errors on certain client browsers. And it was, again, was not failing from private locations. We're not failing, neither was anything in the origin was completely fine. So we knew it had to be something in the edge. And since it was only specific locations, we were able to find which Akamai Edge servers were failing and request that file. And it was there was a JavaScript file in the Akamai Edge cache that had the last 100 lines of it truncated, completely cut off. So it was corrupted cache at the edge. And you can't monitor that without like synthetics and browser because there's no, I mean, you're not going to put APM agents on an Akamai Edge cache server. So these are the only things that could be found with something like BrowSyn. Okay. This is a great, so this is like our end goal. One of the things we wanted was to improve our uptime score. So this is the actual dashboard we use for the Red Hat customer portal that we report on quarterly of the overall uptime of the Red Hat customer portal. When we started using browser and synthetics, we set a goal to have 3 nines uptime, and we started out around 99.8, but the customer portal is a collection of many applications, and the uptime score is the average of all of those together. And we were able to find the ones that had the lowest scores and focus on those to improve their uptime. To now, we can see like 4 nines. I've never seen that before. Like I've been doing this for like a year of working on this, and through browsers and synthetics and insights, we're able to show clearly that our uptime score is improving because of that. So the last slide, my last slide is one of I wanted to share a little bit about how we automate our public status page, the Red Hat status page. So whenever a customer has an availability problem with our application, the first thing we want them to check is our status page. So they go to status.redhat.com. And when they do that, we want to make very sure that the status page reflects the operational state of the application at that time. And if it doesn't, then you can expect to be memed on Twitter. This happened to a cloud provider I won't name, but it happened where they had a massive outage, but their status page said everything was operational. And they got pretty embarrassed because of that. So you never want to be in that situation. So we have synthetics, which tell us what are the availability, synthetics and browser, which tell us the availability of our applications from the customer's point of view. Why not use that to automate our status page? So we wrote this middle component called status page controller. It's on GitHub. Anyone can use it. Just search status page controller on GitHub. And what it does is it glues together the alerts, New Relic alerts, and status page. So whenever there's an incident with, for example, I'll take a synthetic monitor fails, it creates an incident in New Relic alerts. Then the status page controller maps that to a component on the status page, and then we'll change the operational state based on the result of the monitor. Or if the performance is down with browser, it can change it to degraded performance. And then it also notifies our on-call team, which which creates incident reports and updates and all that stuff. So this is how we operationalize our status page based on BrowSyn, and it's how we can provide a benefit to our customers directly through instant feedback on our status page. So that is how we're using BrowSyn at Red Hat, and I will turn it back to Ty.
Thank you, Jared. With that, we're going to jump to a couple of product announcements. But before we jump to that, hopefully some of those examples of what Jared was provided gives you an idea of how you can leverage browser synthetics to put together this comprehensive view, right, as two different products. But now, as a product announcement, we actually want to introduce comparative charting. So we are introducing BrowSyn. But what does this mean, right? So if you are a browser and synthetics customer and you're monitoring a URL that also has an agent deployed in browser, you're going to have this comparative chart. And let's see if I can use this laser pointer to show you. What it is going to show you the synthetics compared to non-synthetics data on both browser and in synthetics products. So this is that view that we're explaining where it can compare your baseline, your optimal, to your actual. And so it allows you to say, hey, is something affecting my customers or is it affecting my monitors? And then from there, take direction and actually to resolve it. Or, hey, maybe both look great. Or another scenario is my baseline is a lot faster than my actual. So how do I improve my page performance for my customers and leverage that synthetics data to improve my page load times? So we're really excited about this. If you're in browser and you go to the page views and you go to a page detail, you'll be able to see this. And in synthetics, it's on the monitor summary page. And we expect this to be released in the next couple of weeks. Jumping to the roadmap, I'm just going to review a couple of the browser items, and then John will jump through some synthetics items. First thing I wanted to talk about was we're calling the new agent. So originally we released this as the SPA browser agent. So if you're not using this, I would highly recommend, if you're a pro customer, you jump on this. This is going to give you a lot more details into the elements that load on your page, and it's event-driven, so it gives you a lot more benefits with insights. You'll also be able to leverage some of the new features that we're working on over the next year from a browser standpoint. We have two betas going on, JS errors as events and AMP performance. So JS errors as events is leveraging the insights data and capturing JS errors as events so that you can use insights to perform more detailed query. But this also allows us we're going to be adding it to the browser UI so you can get and filter and fastly group your JS errors data in a better view. That is still in the works. The current beta is just actually leveraging insights to view your JS errors. AMP is accelerated mobile pages. It's something that Google released a couple years ago. It allows you to have a almost instant page load on a mobile device. So we're supporting that in a beta period now. That also is in Insights. We're capturing the data and allowing you to compare it in Insights, but we'll be incorporating that into the browser UI going forward. And then you'll see the trend as events. So we have Ajax and traces as events in the works on our roadmap. So we'll be capturing and kind of slicing and dicing the Ajax and trace details into an events-driven model so you can do a lot more deep dive analysis on your event or traces and Ajax, and then also incorporate that into the UI. So a lot of events work from a browser standpoint. One other item I wanted to highlight was domain conditions. So you might have already heard this product or feature. It's been released, I think, for a little while now, but it allows you to filter out domain traffic that is coming in from multiple domains to one app and browser. So say you have 5 domains that you have your tag on, and you don't want to, or your agent, you don't want to remove the agent from all 5 domains because you don't have the bandwidth to that. You can use domain conditions to filter out the domains you don't want to see. So the app will only report the domain you want. So just a quick reminder and tip there if you have that issue. I'm going to hand it over to John to talk through some of the synthetics items.
Right on, thank you. All right, so the big thing we're excited to announce for synthetics today is a beta of secure credentials. So what this is, for those of you who are existing synthetics users, you may know that in a scripted monitor, you might, let's say, be logging into a site. You need a username and password to do that. Historically, we've had that username and password as part of the script, which means when you're editing the script, you can see that information. So that's not as secure as we'd like it to be. It's not as secure as you'd like it to be. So going forward, what we're going to do is give you the ability to use a non-sensitive key in the script, which references a value that will get substituted in at runtime and then scrubbed from the results and the logs. So this allows you to manage your scripts without exposing that kind of sensitive credential data to whoever is responsible for those scripts. Looking at our roadmap a little bit on this theme of kind of controls, we want to build out some audit logging. So this is about understanding who has changed what, when in synthetics, and being able to roll back changes to scripts that are not favorable. We've got live now 4 new locations. We've got Montreal, Mumbai, Seoul, and the very exotic Columbus, Ohio. So those are in production today, ready for your use. Looking at the roadmap again, one of the next things we want to do is take that virtual machine version of the private minions and convert that into a Docker image. So this will help with easier installation and updating, as well as kind of opening up more environments for those private minions and allowing you to do some auto scaling with orchestration software. We'll build out a point-and-click script recorder so you can create your synthetic scripts much more easily. And we want to continue to expand our geographic footprint up to more than 30 locations, hopefully next year or so. On the alert side, I'm going to steal a little thunder from our alerts team. They have released NERCL baseline alerting. So the reason I'm talking about that in the context of synthetics is synthetics stores all of its data in insights, which means with NERCL baseline alerts, you can now do baseline alerting on all of your synthetics data. So that's pretty cool. And as we continue to wage war on alert fatigue, we want to build out some more controls so you can determine for yourself what is an alertable offense in synthetics. So this might be, you don't want to be woken up at 3 in the morning unless, let's say, 4 locations are failing concurrently. Or it might be, tell me when 2 out of 3 consecutive checks have failed. So that's pretty much it for announcements and roadmap. And I don't know with the technical difficulty if we have time, but if we do, we'll take some questions. And thank you all for being here.
We just have a couple minutes, so I think we have time for 1 or 2 questions if anybody has. I see one over there. All right.
Thanks. Really quick, naive question. The Dockerized private minions, you're talking about your backend because you're hosting those minions anyway, or do I misunderstand where those monitors run?
We're playing musical mics here. So the question is, what do I mean when I say Dockerized private minions? So I'm not talking about our backend where we're hosting them. We offer today a virtual machine version of our minions that run the synthetics checks that you can host on your own either cloud provider or infrastructure. And that has been a virtual machine. What we want to do is provide a Docker image so that's easier to install and just a little bit easier to work with.
Okay, gotcha.
And I think we might have time for just one more if anybody has one. But it looks like no one does, so that's convenient. We're ending on time. Oh, wait. You ruined my convenient speech. Just kidding.
Yeah, so there's some redundancy with your JS WebDriver and other Selenium scripts that we might maintain for automated testing or monitoring. Is there a way or planned roadmap where we could set state in synthetics? So imagine we have scripts that we maintain in our own monitors. They'll just set that state so that it can then be overlaid with browser. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so the question is, can we set state in synthetics because there's overlap with other testing tools? Is that right? So I would have to dig into the details of that to really understand exactly the use case. Maybe, but not necessarily, which is kind of a non-answer. I apologize for that.
All right, and that's rounding that up. Thanks, Ty, John, and Jared. If you think of more questions later, you can find them and talk to them more about BrowSyn later today or tomorrow. So thanks, guys.
Thanks to all of you.
Thank you.